The 97th Academy Awards is getting pretty close now, with already a bunch of predictions and snubs and controversies galore. And with the anticipation of the yearly Oscars coming around, there's still the utter disappointment on how the Academy treats its animation department. Until now. See, back then, the Academy usually treated animation as just a thing for kids. Sometimes they would actually acknowledge the medium by putting them up for more than just animated feature.
What's the secret of cows? These are all cartoons. I thought we got nominated like a real movie.
I mean, before the category even started, the first ever animated film to be nominated, Beauty and the Beast, was up for Best Picture in 1992. And even the likes of Up and Toy Story 3 were up for the big award as well, with a sprinkle of other categories like documentary and best song going for other animated movies as well. But I think around the late 2010s is when the medium was getting highly disrespected by the Academy. I mean, look at the 2017 nominations. Did you really think The Boss Baby was one of the best animated movies that year that deserved the nomination? Heck no.
Upsies! I need upsies!
And it just got worse, as the infamous presentation in 2022 showcased how the Oscars just feel the need to include this category, as a way to sympathize with tired parents taking their kids to theaters for having to put up with these films. And yet, one of the nominations that year was a documentary about an Afghanistan immigrant fleeing from his home country as a refugee, and is also represented as a gay man. Yeah, that's definitely just a silly movie for kids. Granted, a year later they would address this controversy and at least try to acknowledge the importance of the medium, with Guillermo del Toro winning the award, and also showed his expression on why we need to keep giving animation a platform. You know, if it wasn't for The Rock now disapproving this with his excitement over the live-action Moana movie he's in, I would have said this presentation was a step in the right direction. And frankly, with how this year's nominations turned out, I'm pleasantly surprised with how the results turned out to be. I mean, with the worst one of the bunch being a Pixar film, you know you made a smart decision with the choices. And really, this is pretty tough competition. Well, between two movies, but still. I think every movie featured here is a really good representation of how the animation industry thrived in 2024. And I'm going to break down every aspect of these 5 films, with how great they are, and what are their chances of winning the Academy Award. Probably starting with the most surprising of the bunch. I am still surprised this is getting the praise that it rightfully deserves. There's always that one film the Academy picks as the foreign international film slot, and Flow perfects that. There is so much passion here in every frame. It is truly something special. It's just a couple of animals on a blissful journey on a boat with no dialogue, yet you feel immersed in the animation and the characters. This black cat gets swept away from a giant flood and gets stuck in a boat with a capybara, a labrador, a lemur, and a secretary bird, and the story just goes on from there, leaving you guessing what's going to happen next. And what's so special is that these animals act and behave as you think they would, but also share the same thoughts in certain scenarios, and end up working together on many occasions, like helping steer the boat, or all collaborating on rescuing these dogs from harm. And it helps with the visuals and the score here too. The animation was done using the free software Blender and took about 6 years to make, and you could tell every little aspect and detail was put into care when making this. There were no storyboards created, and the team just placed the animals into the scene while they messed around with the camera, making it more realistic when we follow our furry protagonist. And the soundtrack really puts you on an emotional roller coaster. There are moments when the music feels more somber and relaxing when the scene is calm, and gets more tense and exciting when dealing with danger. It's really uplifting. This is such a theory-heavy movie too, leaving the viewer with a bunch of questions. The story is pretty simple from beginning to end, but leaves room for ideas and pondering, and the themes and symbolisms that take place. My favorite scene in this whole movie is where the cat and bird are atop this pillar, and the gravity becomes light, lifting both animals up, before setting the cat back down and sending the bird up to the light. This whole scene just feels so relaxing, emotional, and gratifying at the same time, and the style and soundtrack just make it more special. I absolutely adore this scene so much. I gotta give credit to the Oscars for including the foreign indie films and giving them a platform for more people to watch, and I'm really hoping this one takes the crown. It does have some big competition with another visually stunning film on this list, but with it surprisingly taking the Golden Globe for Best Animated Film, I guess anything is possible. Flow manages to be exciting, intense, and emotionally powerful with just the animation alone, and it just makes it much more impressive. Please, if you haven't seen it yet, please give it a watch. It's not surprising that a Pixar film would show up as a contender for Best Animated Feature. They are the Oscars' golden child. and yet, it's still my least favorite out of this crop of films. Not that it's bad per se, there's still a lot to be said here that's great. Everything that the first Inside Out did that made it stand out was expanded upon this next film, and perfects it. This world is tailor-made for a couple more sequels, and I know I'm biting my lip now when saying that, considering that Pixar is now on their sequels only campaign, but still, the inner workings of Riley's mind, and watching her grow up along with the new and old emotions maturing as well, will be a sight to see. Now, back on track, Inside Out 2 takes the elements of the first film and adds on new additions to the cast. I've already gushed about how anxiety is the true star of the show here, pretty much identifying what the last year was for all of us. And anxiety really isn't a villain here either, since the actual emotion of anxiety is more complex, with overthinking and extreme planning on how scenarios will go. She really struck a chord for multiple people who can relate to personal struggles and the normalization of a panic attack. And the other new emotions stand on their own as well. Embarrassment is really just a huge teddy bear that really needs to be protected at all costs. And we finally get more screen time of disgust, anger, and fear as their characteristics shine more here, playing off Joy's overexcitement and Sadness' sloth-like personality as well. They're not taking a backseat this time around, and that's a treat to see. I'm sure a ton of people were at awe seeing a lot of new and creative things in this movie, like the whole sense of self, which houses good memories for Riley to look back on. This memory vault, which holds back childhood memories Riley once had like this video game character, and Pouchy. The Dream Island now being replaced with an artist's sweatshop with overwhelming drawings of anxious ideas. There's a lot to unpack here. But the core message here is the importance of letting oneself not be controlled by perfection, but letting go of that self-destruction we all deal with. It's better to accept who you truly are than trying to paint an idealized version of yourself and becoming obsessive and envious. You don't need to be so hard on yourself, because everyone shows signs of weakness, even in their proudest moments. And that's what the sequel is all about. And it doesn't help that this is now the highest grossing animated film, surpassing that garbage Lion King remake. So of course the Academy was going to highlight it. The characters are enjoyable and relatable, the dynamics shake up the story elements, and the admirable message of how to deal with complex emotions takes the cake and a slot on their list. Leave it to Adam Elliott to surprise us yet again with a heart-wrenching stop-motion tale about a pair of twins separated and trying to return back home to each other. It's been 15 years ago since Mary and Max, Adam Elliott's first film, which still holds up to this day and is considered a classic in the adult animated medium, yet that film never got a nomination for Best Animated Feature in 2009. So, this feels like a long time coming for Adam. He really puts his heart and soul into these films and really gets into the psyche of these characters we meet. Now, this is definitely the saddest movie on this list. I know we just talked about Inside Out 2 and dealing with emotions and all that, but like, this takes it to another level. Very bad things happen to our characters, but it all comes with experience and moving ahead, even when times feel tough. It's not anything to a point of dread or misery, but it does get to those points at sometimes. Everything from the separation of the twins, the brother Gilbert's torture and abuse from his new religious family, to Sister Grace's divorce over this weird fat fetish guy who kept overfeeding her. This movie is very effective in its storytelling, whether it wants to make you laugh at a very dark joke or cry at a very tender moment. And over an 8-year production period, this movie feels earned with its heartfelt tale of triumph over despair. And this is the second R-rated animated film to ever be nominated, the first being Anomalisa. If you like a dark but moving brand of storytelling, the Memoir of a Snail is right up your alley. The newest film that barely squeaked by. It's honestly surprising that this film just came out like a month ago and is already worthy to stack up against these colossal giants of 2024. Having their second outing since 2005, Wallace has now invented the Smart Gnome to help out the neighborhood with their gardening, until the famous Feathers McGraw manages to hack into the gnome's system and escapes from jail to get back the diamond from the wrong trousers. Using a lot of elements from previous Wallace and Gromit films, it doesn't feel like a rehash and still feels fresh with that pure, Aardman-like style that the studio has for a long time. It's still very inventive with the way it tells the story. Of course, you got the iconic duo themselves being very cheeky and just a sight to see with their expressions and mannerisms, especially Gromit. Plus, the new characters also make a great impression as well, including the robot gnome Norbot, who is the comedic charm of the film with his adorable robotic quirks, but can also be a bit menacing when he and the gnomes turn evil under Feathers' control. The stop motion is still top notch, as I've always been impressed with how Aardman uses their best animators to shoot these scenes with so much fluidity. The jokes are still great as well, with the gnome serving feathers, Officer McIntosh's back and forth with his new recruit, the canal climax, it's all there. It's just nice seeing these two back on a full feature-length film. With Aardman really pushing their more iconic films into sequels with less than mixed results, it's always good to see that the magic of Wallace and Gromit never faded away. Plus, the theme about the use of technology and the friendship that Wallace and Gromit share being torn by it leaves room for some heartfelt moments. This film goes deep into the inventions that Wallace creates and how it can dampen one's relationship, and the crisis Wallace has when his inventions get confiscated, since that's all he thinks he's ever good at, and Gromit feeling a little concerned with Wallace's obsession that he even feels replaced with the introduction of Norbot. In the end, it's nice to see that these two resolve their conflicts and accept each other's personal wishes, and that's what makes these two stand out. The legacy that these two have had for 30 plus years now has been nothing short of excellence. This film is another banger in their catalog, and the Academy was very kind enough to include this right at the deadline of their shortlist. It's a sweet love letter to the claymation medium and the duo themselves. And hey, if they could score an Oscar way back in 2005 with Curse of the Were-Rabbit, surely they might have another chance winning it again. But they do have some stiff competition. DreamWorks' final in-studio film, and it's magnificent. Truly something special even from the trailers alone, and that's pretty understandable. They pulled out all the stops to making this a great adaptation to its source material that they delivered. The story follows a robot named Roz who tries to adapt to her surroundings of the wildlife and ends up mothering an orphan goose and making friends with a scheming fox. Roz actually fits in with the environment, although it does take a while, and learns the language of every animal and works well on a story element. The animals play off with Roz's stoic mannerisms, which is where the humor shows. The vocal performances of Lupita and Pedro Pascal are the standouts here. The music, just like Flo, is very uplifting to every scene. And the movie is just so gorgeous to look at. Very heavily inspired by the works of Hayao Miyazaki and classic Disney films, the aesthetic of watercolor paintings is what makes the visuals here pop. I think the climax of this film is the standout here, where all the animals decide to work together to not only save Roz's life during the winter, but also saving their whole forest from the destruction of these robots taking over. And it doesn't feel rushed either. It takes its time setting its pace with the characters and the emotional growth that shows throughout the plot. This also pays homage to nature itself, with a celebration but also dangerous portrayal of wildlife. There's plenty of animals Roz befriends, but also deals with some that are more hostile towards her. Every season goes by as Roz faces the harsh weathers of winter and the beauty of spring. Roz herself is a fascinating character, as part of a mechanic personality is now showcasing a more human connection when she's around her adopted Gosling Brightbill. And her train of thought goes on the rails on how she thinks she's supposed to feel and how she's actually feeling. In the end, she goes against her programming in order to protect and mother Brightbill to her capacity, and I think that's what makes this film so special. The feeling, the reflection of feeling, the message of selflessness, the tender theme of motherhood, all wrapped in a brilliant, eye-opening masterpiece of pure art that will be a staple in modern animation for decades to come. So, now that we've got a whole synopsis of our 5 leading nominations, who do I think is going to take home the Oscar this year? Well, anything can happen, and I won't deny that this is a great crop of films on our hands. But, when it all comes down to it, there's only 2 that stand on top. I think the one that has the least chance of winning is Memoir of a Snail. It is nice to see it nominated just for Adam Elliott's sake, and having another independent film on the shortlist is fantastic. But, with all honesty, it does seem like the less buzzworthy movie of the 5. Not a lot of people have even seen it yet. And while it is a critical darling in the film festival scene, winning the Annecy Crystal Award and the Film Audience Award, it seemed to have been stuck in that moment, with little word of mouth from fans and critics alike. I would actually be shocked if this did win. It will definitely be a huge upset in the industry. Next up is Wallace & Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul, still a very recent movie that just barely got in the shortlist, but it would be surprising if this wins, which is very unlikely. Aardman did win with their first film back in 2005, but the Academy has always had this weird thing of not giving the awards to sequels or spin-offs, so I don't see this happening, even if this did win the BAFTA over these other films. But let's be honest, the BAFTA is for British awards, so no wonder. Then we have Inside Out 2, which kind of falls onto the same dilemma as Wallace & Gromit, with the whole sequel thing. And while there was much praise and hype surrounding it, there was also a bunch of skepticism of the film, and thought it didn't live up to the other great Pixar films. And that just leaves us with The Wild Robot and Flo. 2 exceptionally impressive films last year that I have put as my top 2 favorites, and yet I'm still torn about who I want to win and who will actually win. Let's take a look at Flo first. I would have never thought that this film would be stacked up for an Oscar nomination. Heck, this film winning the Golden Globe was just truly otherworldly, and I'm shocked that this could actually take the Oscar as well. Ever since its release, more and more people have been spreading the word about the sublime film that has garnered this much attention from film ceremonies. And that is such a feat for a Latvian indie film with no dialogue. And to be honest, even though I ranked this number 2 on my list, this is my pick. I really want to see Flo take it. That would truly be something for the indie scene, and how many audiences should be paying more attention to the animation outside of the US. And yet, I also wouldn't be surprised or mad if The Wild Robot got it. You only get a couple of great DreamWorks movies every once in a while, and this definitely should get the studio another win. It's one of the best films DreamWorks has ever made. The stylization of the backgrounds and visuals is sublime, the 2D textures of the characters embraces the immersion of its visual quality, and it's just remarkable. All of it. And it will most likely win the Best Animated Feature. But hey, anything could happen. The Oscars aren't afraid to throw in a few surprises out there. Even lesser films like Memoir of a Snail have a chance, so I guess we will have to wait and see. But I guess since I'm talking about the Oscars, is there anything else I want to see win? Well, there are a couple of films here and there, but mainly I want to see Emilia Perez take home every award it's been nominated in. Yeah, baby, that's what I've been waiting for. What a fantastic film from start to end. That Sex Change song completely changed my life. It cured my depression and cleansed me from my sins. I am a new man now. I'm not gonna see this film. We all know this is such an Oscar bait movie. Sorry to spill the beans to you guys. 13 nominations, 13. With that out of the way, congrats to the nominees, and let's see where the ceremony goes from here.